Hello, I'm Ryan Wilson. For my class project, I built a single-page, multi-section form for reuse for client work. I do a lot of website design, and I'm very comfortable with the design and the front-end work. This is the first time I've ever done any back-end development. The content was based on a recent client request. The form was originally intended to be an email-only delivery. However, for the sake of this project, I built a MySQL database to collect user input. The concept was loosely based on the Apple Store checkout. I wanted to include jQuery calendar selectors, autofill, and real-time validation. I also wanted to keep the form on one page, allowing users to easily edit information from prior sections and enabling jQuery to show and hide each section as required. The form was built using PHP, jQuery, and HTML5 and styled using CSS. I began by designing the form concept in Adobe Illustrator. The results of the paper prototype were very positive, so I continued to use the original design. I began by building the shell based on the low-fidelity prototype design as one inclusive form and then styled it using CSS. After the form was built, I started by making it a functional form, adding PHP validation and several if statements. At this point, I styled the response email, added jQuery validation, the drop-down menus, show and hide functionality, and the date picker. The former user testing results were very positive. I used a similar scenario as what was used in the original paper test. The same 3 individuals were available for the second round of testing. Each user was asked to sit in a quiet location to read the scenario and execute what was asked of them in the scenario using a computer. I recorded their actions on screen and took observational notes as they filled out the form. All of the users tested had very similar times when completing each section of the form and the overall form. The average time for completion of the entire form is approximately 2 minutes 44 seconds, which I think is a fair time for completion of an online form. Some delay can be assumed because of checking back to the scenario sheet to confirm the information. All 3 users had very positive feedback. They did find a few content-related errors, as well as pointed out a few aesthetic suggestions that made their way into the final version of the form. The form works as you would assume a typical web form works. However, each section is either shown or hidden using jQuery per need to avoid very long forms when only a few lines are needed. The form inputs are stored in a session array. Each continue button then posts to the session array, and then those variables are recalled when the form is submitted and inserted into the database, as well as emailed to the client email address and CC'd to the user. During the course of this project, I found that using global variables in PHP can be very difficult. I ended up using session variables in a very similar way to achieve the same result. I also experienced other issues related to having multiple forms on one page. I also came upon an issue where Internet Explorer doesn't read placeholder tags. I thought I found some jQuery code to fix that, but it conflicted with my validation. Also, when I uploaded my form to my personal website, my form wasn't working as it had locally. So to resolve this, I just switched to a different server. Additionally, I was never able to successfully get jQuery to accept and or in conditional statements, although I found plenty of resources that said that this could be done. Also, I was not able to get jQuery to validate, or rather not validate, the hidden sections of my form, and had to fall back on the hidden sections to validate via PHP, which I think for its current use works fine. So for future use, I intend to offer this form as an optional bundle to my clients, styled to the client design. Now that the form has potential for a connected database, if I do encounter a client who needs database collection, I can offer that option, but I can always fall back onto the email-only form. Future additions to this project may include smooth scrolling anchors as suggested by one of my users in my final user test. I'd also like to get the jQuery validation working so when the hidden sections are shown, then they would validate, but when they're hidden, they won't. The complete project took me over 100 hours starting design on September 23rd and completing my final user test on November 18th. The bulk of the time spent on the project was between October 31st and November 16th, when a majority of the PHP and jQuery coding and error correction took place. As a result, this project took me how much time that back-end developers spend on their work, how much time is spent on a project, and how much mental capacity goes into achieving their goal.